Goodness. Well, wonderful. It's 9:31. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for everyone for sharing where you're dialing in from. We have a really big group joining today. And this is the first webinar of 2019. So welcome, and we're so happy to have all of our amazing panelists today. I'll be introducing them in just a second. But first, I wanted to give a quick introduction to Blueboard for those of you who are new or haven't met us before. Why are we having this webinar today? Because we believe in meaningful recognition as a tool for driving employee engagement. Jill's going to be talking a little bit about that as we jump into the content. But Blueboard is ultimately the leader in experiential rewards and recognition. And what that means is that instead of giving employees whenever they maybe hit an anniversary milestone, they refer a new hire to your company or maybe go above and beyond in their role, instead of giving them a catalog of things to choose from, like merch or electronics, or maybe a gift card or cash bonus, you're able to offer them a really beautifully designed experience menu that has an amazing collection of hand-curated experiences, whether that's taking the family to Disney World, trying surfing for the first time, hiking through ice caves in Iceland, seeing Evan Hansen on Broadway. All of those things are your employee's choice, and we bring those to life through an amazing, talented concierge service. So you're welcome to learn more about Blueboard. You can reach out to me directly or check us out online at blueboard.com/experiences. A few just notes on upcoming events. We're actually going to be headed down south to Santa Monica next week for a great meetup targeted to everyone who's enthusiast about culture and building teams and having a happy workplace. We'll be partnering with a few amazing brands like Poppin, Managed by Q, and Snack Nation to host a free meetup at Poppin's headquarters in Santa Monica. That'll be next Wednesday at 6:00 p.m. and you can RSVP to save your seat. I've included the bit.ly link here, but just bit.ly.com/Blueboard meetup. Some other exciting news is that we're hiring our first head of people at Blueboard. This is going to be such an amazing role. We're looking for a true innovator in the people space, someone who's excited to really use Blueboard as a testing space for new and innovative and amazing ideas to really help drive engagement specifically, as well as our recruiting efforts. So you can actually apply for that role through AngelList, or the short link is here on screen. You can just go to bit.ly/Blueboard head of people. If you want to stay in the know and grab a few resources like the ebook that I placed in the chat, those all live at blueboard.com/resources. And then specifically to stay in touch with Jill, you can grab her copy of If Not You, Who on Amazon. And a really great part of our webinar today is that we're actually going to be giving out up to 15 copies of Jill's book for free. And we're going to be doing that by really looking at engagement here on the webinar. So if you ask questions through the Q&A tool, you'll see that at the bottom bar of your Zoom. As you ask questions for our panelists, we'd love to take those, and those will qualify you to have a book mailed to you next week. So definitely raise your hand, ask some questions. We'd love to hear from you, and would love to give you a copy of Jill's book after the event. So jumping forward, let's go through and meet our roundtable. As I mentioned, I'm Morgan Cheney. I'm our head of marketing and a big part of our culture committee. We're excited to welcome Jill Christensen, who's a true employee engagement expert. You might have seen her as a keynote speaker at some of the HR conferences this past year, and I believe she's a keynote coming up at HR Star in LA. Welcome, Jill. We're so happy to have you today.
Oh, I'm so pleased to be here.
We also have Amanda Armois. She's the head of people at Versus Systems, dialing in from California as well. Welcome, Amanda.
Good morning. Hi, everyone.
And we also have Josh Bain, who's a people services manager at Galileo Learning, calling in from Oakland. Yeah. Welcome, Josh. Great. So jumping forward into our agenda, Jill's going to take the reins after I wrap up here. She's going to share a little bit of the state of employee engagement, catch us up on some of the stats and what the space is looking at right now. She'll also take us through her 4-step model, 4 pillars really for driving engagement and really changing the code of disengagement at your company. And then we'll be turning it over to Josh and Amanda, who are going to walk through some practical applications and ideas that they've implemented at their companies that have been a great tool for driving engagement. And then last but not least, we'll jump into live Q&A. That'll be with myself, Jill, Josh and Amanda. As you want to add questions, you can include those on the chat or more specifically in the Q&A box, which again, you'll see across the toolbar in your Zoom window. If you have any insights to share along the way, feel free to share those on social media. We're using hashtag #CrackTheCode for today's webinar. Just an FYI on housekeeping, all lines will be muted. So if you do have questions, please add those again via chat or via the Q&A. For urgent questions, you can add those in. And actually one that just came through from Cynthia. Yes, we will get, you'll be able to get a copy of the PowerPoint. I'm happy to mail those out to anyone. We will also be recording the webinar. So if you have to duck out early, that will be published to our blog within the next day or two, along with a recap of some of the insights that the audience shares today. So without further ado, we'll jump in. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jill, who's going to kick off the employee engagement section. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Morgan. So I always like to start at the beginning, which is ensuring that we are all on the same page. And to start with that, let's define employee engagement. So when I think of employee engagement, I'd love for you also to think that it's when your employees trust your senior leaders and they feel an emotional connection to your company, to your organization. Because when employees are engaged, we know that they go above and beyond the call of duty and they give you a lot of discretionary effort. And that's the main reason why employee engagement matters. If you think about it, your employees have a choice. They go to work every single day and they can do what they have to do to get by, or they can give you every single thing they have and then some. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for them to go above and beyond the call of duty. But they will only do that if they feel this connection to both your leadership and to your organization. And so what you're going to hear a lot from me today is that in order for you to make progress in this space, you must form a team. Human resources cannot be the only player on the team if you want to succeed, engaging your employees and creating an amazing workplace culture. So a great example of a team that I love to use, Dorothy and her friends from The Wizard of Oz. And that's because the vast majority of people around the globe have seen this movie. And so you understand this team's plight, you understand their personalities. If you think about what they went through, they absolutely went above and beyond the call of duty, and their discretionary effort was second to none. They were stalked by the Wicked Witch of the West, Toto the dog was kidnapped, they were ambushed by winged monkeys, and they were drugged in a poppy field. Does this ever sound like a typical day in your organization? I know it does, because this is what businesses look like. So yet through it all, this group of people, this team did not stop until they achieved their goal. Why? Because they were engaged. They trusted the person giving them direction, Glinda the Good Witch, and they felt an emotional connection to their mission, which was to make it to Oz and get Dorothy back to Kansas. And so we know that reams of data exist showing us that engaged workers sell more, they provide better customer service, they do more mistakes, they stay longer, they're great ambassadors for your brand, and they recommend your organization as a great employer to their family and their friends. But even though we have all of this powerful data about the benefits of having an engaged workforce, as you can see on the next slide, companies are absolutely failing. And they're not just failing in the United States, they're failing around the globe. It is absolutely dismal. Only 13% of global employees say that they are engaged. 30% in the United States. The remainder of employees, they're basically sleepwalking through their day, putting in time, but no passion, energy, or creativity into their work. They don't trust their leaders. They're not emotionally connected to your organization. They're not going above and beyond the call of duty, and they're giving you zero discretionary effort. And I can assure you that employee disengagement does not happen overnight. Every single one of your employees showed up for their first day of work, willing to give you every single thing they had, willing to go above and beyond the call of duty, but little by little, our dysfunctional workplace cultures chip away at people's spirits over time. It's sort of like being in a bad relationship. You don't wake up one day and realize, oh, this isn't for me. Things happen little by little by little, and they add up. And then you wake up one morning and your alarm clock goes off and you don't want to go out of bed and go to work. And that's when you know that you're completely and utterly disengaged, although you may have started that job a week before, a month before, a year before, completely in 110%. And so what does it mean for your organization when the vast majority of your people are disengaged and have checked out? It looks like decreased productivity, creativity, customer satisfaction and retention, and increased absenteeism, theft, safety, and quality issues. And the granddaddy of them all, and the thing that your leadership team is going to care about the most, stagnant or decreased revenue growth. Because we know there's a direct correlation between employee engagement and bottom line results. The most profitable companies in the world and the companies that are growing the fastest have the highest levels of employee engagement, and that is not a coincidence. So the Gallup organization conducts the State of the American Workforce Survey every fall, and they conducted it the first time approximately 3 decades ago to measure employee engagement among American workers. The sad part is that virtually no progress has been made in 3 decades. The number in 2018 is the same as 2008, is the same as 1998, is the same as is the same as 1988. So in spite of the fact that organizations are spending billions of dollars creating great cultures, and despite the fact that 87% of C-suite executives actually say that employee disengagement poses a real threat to my bottom line, poor, dysfunctional workplace cultures still reign supreme in every country, in every industry, among every single generation of worker. And so the huge question is, why? In my humble opinion, no progress has been made because traditional approaches cannot move the needle, yet they are still embraced by the vast majority of organizations around the world. And what is the most popular traditional approach to improve employee engagement? Senior leaders outsource culture change to HR. So I repeat, no progress has been made because senior leaders outsource culture change to HR and ask them to fix it all by themselves. And please know, this is not at all a dig against HR. Strategic HR people are phenomenal. However, although you own culture, you don't own the people who have the greatest impact on culture change. And that's your frontline managers. Your CEO owns your organization's frontline managers and can get them to do things that HR cannot. It's just the truth. So if we're no longer going to rely on HR to fix this massive problem by itself, what is a new and innovative approach to employee engagement that actually works? As you can see on the next slide, this. Your senior leaders must get involved in and champion your employee engagement strategy. This is an absolute must. Every organization around the globe that has massive levels of employee engagement, we're talking about 80 to 90% engagement. Their senior leadership teams are engaged in the journey. So you must be thinking, how do I get my senior leaders to engage in employee engagement? Data. Executives love numbers. They love them. They eat them up. Why? Because you don't get to be an executive without learning a thing or two about the numbers. Your executives present numbers all of the time to their boards, and they are judged on their ability to ensure the numbers are directionally correct. They also present all their numbers to employees. They present them to industry analysts. They present them to the street. Your CEO, your CFO, they are wired to live, eat, and breathe on the numbers. So you need to gather all of the compelling data that you can get your hands on, which shows the correlation between employee engagement and profitable revenue growth. And you need to have that critical conversation with your CEO. Savvy leaders will get it, and they will agree to partner with you because they care in spades about the numbers, about revenue growth, about customer satisfaction, about retention. Then once your CEO is on board, he or she is going to lead a manager town hall meeting. They need to bring together every single manager in your organization and communicate to your manager specific actions that they need to do in 4 key areas to re-engage employees. Why 4 key areas? Because these 4 key areas are proven to drive enormous levels of trust in senior leadership and the emotional connection to the organization. So we're going to talk about those 4 key areas next, but again, There are a bunch of different places where you could focus your efforts, but I highly recommend that you start with these 4 areas because we know that they are successful in causing people to stay engaged or to re-engage. And so it's really important that you specifically see that I call this an employee engagement strategy and not a program or an initiative. I think that's another major mistake that organizations make. If you call this an employee engagement program, your employees are going to view it negatively because they'll think it's the latest program du jour, here one day, gone the next. In order for your employees to believe, I mean really believe, that you are serious about re-engaging them, you must execute on a strategy that fundamentally shifts how you operate on a day-to-day basis. Because if you think about it, historically, chances are your leaders were never involved in employee engagement. Historically, chances are you did not have your managers focusing on a handful of key areas that we know are proven to drive up engagement scores, to drive up satisfaction among employees. So again, your people need to see that you're approaching this differently. This is not something that's here one day, gone the next. We are fundamentally shifting our people strategy and how we are approaching our culture. And so when I led global internal communications at Avaya, we executed on this strategy. And again, we were a 100-year-old telecommunications firm, right? We were an old school organization. We executed on this strategy, and in 1 year, leveraging this strategy, we increased employee engagement 11 points, and our stock rose 26%. Last year, I focused with the Green River Medical Center in Utah. They executed on this strategy. They increased employee engagement 31 points in 6 months. According to Gallup, 2 points is statistically significant. And why am I sharing these results with you? I'm sharing with you these results to give you hope. If we could re-engage 35,000 employees in 55 countries in a 100-year-old telecommunications company that was spun off of AT&T and Lucent Technology, and that was very political and bureaucratic and hierarchical, you can absolutely re-engage the employees in your organization. And if you're wondering, Jill, who are the benchmarks today? What are the organizations that are rocking it in this space? And we're talking about employee engagement numbers around 90% engagement when only 65% engagement is best in class. So think about that. Employee engagement is such an issue for the vast number of organizations around the world that if you have 65% of your employees engaged, you're best in class in this space. These are organizations that are hitting 80, 90, 95% engagement. Think about Southwest Airlines, Zappos, Netflix, Costco, Google, the Ritz-Carlton, and Chick-fil-A. Okay, so these, if you want to start looking at some organizations, these are some extraordinary benchmarks. So moving to the next slide, before we delve into the 4 focus areas, let me share with you what happens when you don't have an extraordinary culture. So that thing in the bubble, I'm sure all of you remember this when you watch The Wizard of Oz, is what we call a flying monkey. I call a flying monkey a bad manager or a bad leader. So although I can't see any hands and I can't see the over 200 of you who are on this line, who was absolutely terrorized when as a child you watched The Wizard of Oz and those flying monkeys descended out of the castle, flapping their wings, right? It was absolutely horrible. How many of you have worked for a flying monkey? Raise your hand. I can't see your hands, but my guess is virtually every single hand on the line is going up because when I speak live, virtually every single hand in the room goes up. Raise them high. We have all worked for a flying monkey. My friends, this scenario is not a stretch. When employees don't trust your leaders, when they don't trust your managers, they go to work every single day and they feel like they're under attack. A black cloud hangs over their head and they respond by disengaging. However, it doesn't have to be this way. You have a choice. You can be seen as a tactical flying monkey or a strategic HR business partner who gets it. if you embrace a new and innovative approach, if you enroll your CEO in this journey, you will start to rebuild the trust that your employees have lost in your leadership team, and you will be halfway to cracking the code of employee disengagement. So moving on to the 4 focus areas on the next slide. The first half of the strategy is getting your senior leaders involved. It is critical. The second half of the strategy includes the 4 areas where your managers need to focus their efforts. How did I land on these 4 areas? When I was creating my employee engagement book, when I was creating my employee engagement strategy, I went out and benchmarked the 15 companies around the globe that have the highest levels of employee engagement. And these areas kept coming up over and over and over again. And in all 15 of these companies, like I said earlier, the senior leadership team was engaged in the employee engagement journey. These are, when you look at the organizations that are excelling in this space, they are not organizations who have outsourced culture change to HR and asked HR to fix the problem on their own. They're organizations who get it, where the senior leader engages the frontline managers to do things differently in each of these 4 bubbles. And you might be thinking, Jill, how could there be just one model to engage employees in every industry, in every generation, and in every country, since everyone is different? My response to that, everyone is not different. At their core, people are wired the same way. All of your employees are human beings, and for the most part, what motivates and inspires you motivates and inspires me. What deflates and discourages you deflates and discourages me. Very, very few people are wired to work solely for money. So what does engage and inspire the vast majority of people? This. Employee engagement is not rocket science. You simply need to meet your employees' basic human needs. So when we look at bubble number 1, get the right person in every chair, your employees want to work for a company whose leaders hire for a values match. You have got to be hiring for values. You cannot just be hiring for a job skills match. Your people also want to be working for leaders and managers who help employees develop when they are in the wrong job, or when they're not in the right chair, or when they have skills deficiencies. And they also want to work for an organization who has the confidence and courage to remove people from the chair if they're not pulling their weight, if they have a toxic attitude, or if they are a really bad leader of people. And we have tried to help that person improve, and that person chooses to not improve or doesn't have the skills to improve. It is so critical that you have the right person in every chair. And let me tell you another reason why this is so important. When you have a person in your organization who is incompetent at their job, who has a toxic negative attitude, or who leads people and they are a really, really bad leader, and that person chooses to not improve or doesn't have the skills to improve, and you allow that person to stay in their chair, every single employee around that person knows that that employee doesn't belong there. And you know what they immediately think? Why isn't senior leadership doing anything about this? And in that moment, you are chipping away at the trust that your engaged employees have in your senior leadership team. You're actually causing them to disengage, okay? So you've got to get the right person in every chair. Bubble number 2, create a line of sight. This is also goal alignment. It is so critical that your employees can see a line of sight between where they are in the organization and where the organization is going and what the CEO is focusing on. Why? Because when we ask employees, why do you go to work every day? Virtually 80% of them say, I go to work because I want to have meaning, I want to add value, I want to make a difference. And we've got our millennials and our Gen Zs saying, I want to change the world. A person cannot feel like they make a difference and that they're adding value unless they see a line of sight between their job in the organization and where the organization is going, the organization's mission, the organization's vision. They need to see that their goals are aligned with the CEO's goals and that what they're working on every single day is adding value and helping the organization to move forward. So this is as simple as ensuring that your employees' goals are written based off of your CEO's goals. It is so critical that you do that. Another reason why it matters, because if everyone in your organization has goals written based off of the CEO's goals, you are all marching in the same direction. You are all working on the same 5 goals. That is how you reach your goals, and that is how you move an organization forward in terms of its goals for the year. Third, build a two-way communication culture. Your employees want to know that they have a voice and that their voice is respected and heard in the workplace. It is so critical for you to be tapping into the minds of your workers. You know, senior leaders say to me, Jill, we're starting to communicate openly and honestly and transparently. And I say, that is phenomenal, great job. But what are you doing to build that two-way communication culture? To find out, what are your employees thinking? What ideas do they have for new products and services? What have your employees heard that your customers want? What do your employees know in terms of processes in your organization that are broken and need to get fixed? Your employees are a wealth of information, but they are not going to just speak up because it is not human nature to speak up. You have got to be asking for your employees' opinions, thoughts, ideas, feelings on a regular basis. The easiest way to do this, conduct focus groups. When there's a decision that needs to be made in your organization, don't have a handful of senior leaders go into a conference room and make that decision and then walk out and declare what was decided to employees. You talk about disengaging people. You need to let people know. For instance, we may be changing our benefits plan next year. We want to hear from you employees. What's working? What's not working? What benefits do you use? What benefits would you like to see? Trust me when I tell you that when you roll out your new benefits plan and you say, we conducted focus groups, we got your input, here's our new benefits plan, here's what it includes, here's what it doesn't include and why. Thank you for your input. It helped us inform our choice. When you create a culture like that, people feel like they matter. People feel like they're making a difference. People feel like their voice is heard. And do you want to know what? They stay engaged or they re-engage. And finally, but least, but never, ever, ever, ever last, because I believe recognition is one of the most important bubbles in this entire 4 focus area space. Your employees want to feel acknowledged and appreciated for a job well done. When we talk to human beings and say, what is one of your basic human needs, right? Outside of water and air, and to be connected to other people, it is to know that I matter. It is to know that I'm making a difference. It is to know that I'm appreciated. It is to know that people are acknowledging me. It is to know that I am being recognized. You have got to create a culture of rampant recognition where everyone in your organization has the ability to lift each other up and to, again, recognize one another in real time, because we know that people really value personalized recognition, and we know that they love experiences. And that is one of the reasons why I am so honored to be partnering with Blueboard. They have an amazing tool, an amazing solution that will help you create that culture of recognition where every single day it's rampant, where people can be rewarding and recognizing and acknowledging and appreciating one another. And if you think about a workplace like that, wouldn't you want to go to a workplace like that each and every day? Don't you think that would cause you, inspire you to have more trust in leadership and in management and to feel a stronger emotional connection to your organization? I mean, when you think about these 4 bubbles, what I want you to take away from this is that in order for you to keep your employees engaged or to re-engage your employees, you simply need to fulfill their basic human needs. It is that easy. I work with organizations all the time on this, and they say to me, Jill, it's so difficult. It's so difficult. It's not difficult. If you engage your senior leaders, who engage your managers, and you start doing things differently in these 4 areas, trust me when I tell you, your employees will stand up and notice a difference. They will stay engaged or re-engage. And if you're thinking to yourself, Jill, we cannot take on any more work. This isn't any more work. You should already be doing all of these things. I know you're already hiring people. I know you're developing people, and hopefully you might even be removing people from your organization. I know you're setting goals. I know you're communicating. I know you're recognizing. What I'm purporting is that you just might not be doing it in a way that is driving massive levels of employee engagement. So again, you are already doing this work. My question to you is what you're doing working? And if it isn't, then it's about time you just shift and you change course and you start doing this differently. And so I know that this might seem like a lot, because right now as an HR practitioner, chances are this is all on your shoulders, but it doesn't have to be on your shoulders. So going to the next slide, the biggest question that I have to ask you is, if not you, who? If you don't make a commitment to start the conversation with your senior leaders, you're going to end up with the same mediocre results year after year after year, because you know and I know that traditional approaches to employee engagement simply don't work. Your engaged employees are going to give you blood, sweat, and tears, and your disengaged employees are going to give you scraps. It is the absolute truth. And for that reason, your disengaged employees offer you the greatest untapped potential for you to improve productivity, profitability, and performance, period. So return to your workplace and let your leaders know that you have a new strategy that's proven to re-engage employees, but you can't be successful without them. You have everything inside of you that you need to succeed in this space. Everything. You have the power, and you always did. You just need to go back to your workplace and unleash it. And so to help you on this journey, we have a few resources for you. Moving on to the next slide. And so again, we're giving away copies of my book to people who ask questions on this webinar. There's also a PDF called The Top 10 Tips to Re-Engage Employees. If you text my name, Jill, J-I-L-L, to the number 42828, you can receive that free PDF. And I promise you, those 10 tips fall into the 4 buckets that we just talked about. And so simply text my name, Jill, to 42828, and you'll receive that PDF. Because here is something that I can absolutely assure you. If you're not deliberate about creating an extraordinary culture, you're going to end up with a culture by chance, and it will not be pretty. It's going to be mediocre at best. And we all know that mediocrity does not breed business success. And so now I'm going to turn it over to two HR practitioners who will share real life examples of how they've created great workplace cultures and have driven increased levels of employee engagement. So take it away, Josh.
Thank you so much. So I'm Joshua Bain. I'm the People Services Manager at Galileo for Employee Experience. And the first thing I want to dive into is just kind of telling you what Galileo is. So we're a national summer camp company. We develop kids to be innovators that envision and create a better world. We do this by teaching a set of values, an approach to innovation applied to themed projects, and it's all tied together by a super fun and silly camp environment. I worked there. That's why I like my job, why I dived in. It's just really good stuff. And at this point, we're close to 3,000 employees with 70 plus sites in 2019. So we're getting pretty big. As a company, we're known for our excellent staff, which is among the reasons we've been trusted by parents and guardians and have been able to grow into this national company, is that people trust us with their kids. We have great staff. So ensuring that we onboard and train staff effectively is a huge deal, both for conveying role information and for getting people to dive into the mission behind the work we do, right? We need them to be very pumped to give this innovation education to our kiddos. And so a couple years back, we were nearing 2,000 staff for the first time. And we had this tried and true in-person onboarding and training experience. And that just really wasn't scalable anymore. We needed to be able to do this with thousands of more people over the years. And so as we neared those 2,000 employees, our solution was trying to figure out like how to make it scalable. And also we have this HQ team, and it was a big deal to plan for that in-person training every single year. And also for onboarding, all the processes were pretty paper-based, starting to be a little bit out of date, and just things that wouldn't work if we weren't having an in-person training anymore. So kind of our first big solution to this was to have online onboarding and training systems that kept the camp magic alive. We did personalized, mission-driven, interactive content, which we made in-house, but then hosted on other task and learning management systems. And so that push was turning to tech, but less as an approach to solve all of our problems, and more as a platform to build our content into. Because we had spent years working on these trainings to get our staff all together, and the engagement surrounding that was really lovely, right? People got to show up and connect with each other. And so we wanted to find a way to capture kind of that in-person environment in a scalable way. And the key for keeping this content, the Camp Magic alive, ended up being making sure all this training happened in-house. So we took all the same people who were doing these trainings in person and recorded them, put together some really like funny things trying to mimic all the training content that would be experienced in person. And then to build that into customized tracks based around tenure with the company, role with the company, where your site was going to be. So when people started to actually hop into the online training, it felt as close to showing up to our historical in-person trainings as possible. But of course, it's the future with cool tech. So they were able to do that from the comfort of their own locations and when it worked for them. And they could do it earlier than like a couple weeks before camp. So they could learn over the course of the months before camp. So it really met people in a bigger way where they were. And so the online training encompasses not only these things for our camps, but also things for HQ as well. So we train people on our mission and values, our company-wide inclusion initiatives, what it means to be a certified benefit corporation, because Galileo is a B Corp, and also to some of the more like silly and fun trainings, whether at camp or HQ, which is like leading icebreakers. So it's just really vast, everything you put in to the online training. And just for reference, systems-wise, we used iSIMS for the onboarding platform, which allowed us to have all the tasks be digital. And so people could more or less be onboarded before they arrive for work with at least some more like the HR focused things. And then for the training platform, we used Spoke. So works out pretty well. They're both platforms that allow you to build your own content into something versus having to use a certain thing. So that feels pretty good to have systems that kind of let us customize. And so moving on from onboarding and training, let's hop over to the next slide. Looks like our video popped out a little bit, but I'll keep chatting and you'll see it in a moment. And so it's kind of interesting for Galileo because at camp, the engagement is a part of the environment itself, right? Like the awesome world staff create for campers also becomes their own awesome world that they get to work and live in, you know, for the summer. So our thought process for us is always thinking like, but what about the headquarters staff, right? Like they're not at camp directly. So since they're not there, like maybe the silly stuff doesn't happen or the fun engagement doesn't happen by default. So a good chunk of us, which is myself included, right? We work from an office space throughout the year and we debrief and plan and hire for the next camp season, but don't always get to go to camp to do like that really fun and silly engagement. And so for us, regardless of role, we want to make sure that we ensure all employees, or as we call them, Galileans, experience the excitement that is present in our programs. And so we work on this both in really specific ways and try to have our culture be present in a sort of broad, like feel it all around the office sort of way. There's like a costume closet. There's just like silly art everywhere from the kids. Thinking about how to build the campiness at HQ. Something we do is just try to figure out like what those moments are at camp that might be silly and that might engage employees in a really great way that might not be by default present at HQ. And so our solution is to break apart those moments and systematize them. So when somebody starts, we actually have a work plan that we kick off that lists a bunch of things, right? So for instance, we place a curriculum project on everyone's desk so they can work on a project like our campers do. We allow everyone to have that touch point with our crafty, innovation-driven culture. And we also have these moments throughout the year that lean heavily into the fun of our camps by hosting various events and culture moments. One example of this is our Master Chef Challenge, which is where folks on our team optionally sign up to have a team that competes with other teams to make food based around silly prompts. Like one time we had a Eat Like a Camper prompt, which more or less became this like really funny celebration of kid-loved foods and snacks, but done in like really gourmet ways. So we just systematize these silly things and make it feel more campy and get you engaged with your work, and also engaged with the outcome of your work. Because in the end, all we do in the office is to build these really awesome, silly, innovation-inspired camp experiences. So we want our HQ experience to feel like that as well. And so for some other examples, we always kind of use systems at Galileo for engagement. So there's also other things like training everyone on shared feedback and perspective practices, ensuring folks understand their roles and personal goals in connection with company goals by having a regimented goal and evaluation process throughout the year. We gauge employees via quarterly surveys to see how the employee experience is going, and also have things like moments of recognition built into staff and all staff team meetings and things like that. So there's all these moments where you have recognition, get to know why you're doing good at your work, have a connection with the work in the larger picture. So we always make sure people are aware of what they're up to. And so kind of to sum it up, Galileo is all about figuring out our culture, what's important for the why behind working at Galileo, and then also finding the right path and the right systems to make it easy to manage and implement all these wonderful things we've thought of. Because we don't want to keep it all in our heads. We want to have systems that support us in making these things easy. So yeah, we kind of use systems as the push for that. And so that's kind of the Galileo spiel. I will now hand it over to Amanda, who's head of people at Versus Systems.
Sorry, I was of course speaking and had not unmuted myself. Hi, everyone. So I just want to give a little background about Versus before I jump in, just so you have an idea of what we do here. Our motto, both internally and externally, is that we make games more fun, which essentially means we're an advertising technology firm who creates platforms that go into video games to allow players to win prizes. And so engagement is kind of our business and a big part of what we do. And we try to bring that into the culture by really thinking about starting from the very beginning with hiring and onboarding, because I really believe that that's where you get the most bang for your buck in creating a culture that people really want to be a part of and believe in. So for us, that's translated into creating specific comprehensive job descriptions that really reflect what the new team member is going to be doing. And how they'll fit into the organization and impact product. So we have very specific job descriptions that say, when you come on board, you're going to be able to do this. This is going to be a big part of what you do. The impact you make will be this way and will affect this part of the product. You'll work with this team. Your role will be, and we found that changing those job descriptions has made a really big difference in the type of candidates we get, and also in how excited they are to come on board, because they know exactly what is expected of them and how they'll be participating and interacting. And even more importantly, what part of our company-wide goals they'll be responsible for. And since we're a small startup, I mean, at this point, we're not so much a startup, we've been around for 4 years, but we're definitely very small. We're about 35 people. And so we really get candidates who want to be involved in that impact, and who want to feel like they're doing something every day to help us reach the bottom line. So specific goals and measurement make a huge difference for people. We also, during onboarding, want to gain a real understanding of how they like to be managed and rewarded, because rewards and recognition go so far in keeping people engaged and feeling like responsible and taking on responsibility. And what I've come to learn over time is that not everyone really wants to be rewarded in the same way. Some people love public recognition. Some people really hate being acknowledged in front of a group. They don't want anyone to shout out their name or say like you've done, like they just want like a quiet pat on the back, or even just an email or a talk with their manager while they go out and get coffee. So understanding how people want to be rewarded and then making sure to respond to them and reward them in that way is super important. And then conversely, we also have a conversation during onboarding about how they like to receive feedback, because that's really important too. Some people respond very well to explicitly being told, hey, this isn't really the way that this is going to work, or maybe we should do it this way. Other people want more of a coaching atmosphere. And so bringing on the right person to work with the right manager is a huge part of making sure that you can keep that engagement going. And also that they feel like they're getting the growth and development they need to really continue on in the role and be successful. And then the other big part of onboarding is just thinking about how they'll fit into the overall team and company, and making it super clear what their role and responsibility is and how that impacts the overall product that we create. And then we're going into that company-wide involvement. So this has already been mentioned several times, but really getting leadership on board to understand how important engagement is and what it looks like. I found that you can start with talking about the bottom line and just the time and efficiency that are created by having employees who really care about what they do and feel like they're really involved. But it really, a lot of leaders have never worked at a company where engagement was a priority. But they very much remember how it felt to be in those roles and not be recognized and not feel like they were working as part of a team. And so they want that. They want to create that for themselves, and they also want to create it for their staff and their staff. So it has actually been really, really easy here and in consulting positions that I've had to get people excited about being involved, because they want something that they've been looking for, that engagement, they've been looking for that involvement, and they're really excited to create it in a company that they come to every day and a product that they believe in. So that's huge. Ways that we've done that and carried that out in day-to-day are taking our all hands meetings, which happen once a week, and making those into more of a town hall format. So we have Q&A every week from all staff. Anyone can ask any question. And a lot of people don't feel super comfortable asking those questions publicly. So we have an anonymous channel where people can submit those questions beforehand. And then I'll read them out and we'll answer them in that format. We also allow everyone to speak at some point. So when we open the floor up for Q&A, it really is like a town hall, community-wide Q&A, and anyone at any level can ask a question about anything that's being discussed, which creates a lot of transparency and a real sense of buy-in. Because what we're always trying to make sure of is that people feel connected to our culture and our brand. And especially in technology, it's so easy, as I'm sure so many of you know, for really talented staff to find other positions quickly and easily. And so being a part of a culture that they care about and feel committed to is what keeps people around. And it's a big part of, I think, the success that we've been experiencing here. We also have built a really strong employee rewards program, and that's participated in by everyone. So I think a lot of the time leadership actually gets overlooked when it comes to reward and recognition. And it's really important for them to feel like they're also being recognized by the people who lead them. And then they feel a lot more excited about carrying that out throughout all levels. So we do little things like coffee, happy hour. We've got a television that streams things as they're being done in real time. So when one of the engineers fixes a bug, it's up on the TV, everyone sees it. When one of the designers solves a design challenge, whether big or small, everyone can see that. It's a company-wide thing, and we all feel a real sense of pride in seeing that, and then they get to feel good about knowing that it happened. And for the people who don't want to be recognized explicitly, it's like a quiet stream, which seems to happen a lot with engineers in particular. We also do regular check-ins. So I think this was kind of discussed before, but we have a monthly survey where we ask people, like, how do you feel about this? Do you feel that you have all the tools you need for your job? Do you feel that you're getting the guidance and the mentorship you need to grow? And then I think the bigger part of that is responding to it, because when you ask employees for their feedback and then don't respond, they stop giving it, or they feel like it's not really valued. So one of the biggest parts of starting those surveys is actually listening to and responding to the information that's shared. And we do that by posting all the responses in a private Slack channel that only employees can see. And then I'll hold a quarterly town hall with myself and no other senior leadership, so that people feel like they can be super honest about, well, this is happening or this isn't happening. And because of the culture that we've created here, it never feels like a blame game or a, you know, I hate this and this person isn't doing this. Like, we've really worked hard to create a sense of vulnerability so that people feel comfortable sharing, and they don't feel like they're tattling or going behind anyone's back by just saying, like, I really think that this could be better. And they want it to be better because they enjoy being here and they know that they feel listened to. So that's a huge thing. And then I think my last point, just thinking about the bottom line, the very best way to recruit talented people is by having talented, happy people. And so what I found is that our recruitment efforts have been significantly mitigated by having staff that feels engaged and empowered, because they are constantly referring people to come and work with us, which just brings in more talented, happy people. And it's been great. Like, we've been able to cut back on recruitment fees. We've been able to cut back on using platforms that charge monthly rates, just because we now have referrals as our biggest source of applicants, and that's been awesome. And also just it cuts down on the turnover, which means that there are fewer new people to train or to replace, which is huge. And our productivity goes up. People want to work, they believe in the product, and they really like what they're doing, what they're creating, and they feel valued, and they see that impact right away, because Jill said their goals are tied to the CEO's goals, to the company's goals, and they know that what they're doing matters. So that's what we're doing. And now I think we're going to move into the...
Well, sorry guys about that. I must have had a connection outage and it totally quit on me, but thank you so much to the panelists for just rolling with it. Who needs slides? We will definitely, when I share the recording, I will screen share in the slides so that you guys have a little bit more context instead of just the black screen. But yeah, that's what happens with technology, right? It can never go perfect. So huge thank you to everyone just for powering through. So we got so many great questions. I was able to actually jot some of those in, not only during the webinar, but afterwards as well. So I wanted to jump into a few, and really a lot of it came to kind of the conversation around measurement and really how do we focus on that. So there were a few questions that came through really about how do you measure? Is measurement even really effective and valuable? How frequently should you be measuring for engagement? So I'd love to actually start with the panelist to ask if you are running engagement surveys at your companies now, and if so, you're welcome to share like any specific tools that you use, as well as the cadence for how regularly you are monitoring engagement. Yeah, Josh or Amanda, do you guys want to start? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we use Slack here. We've got a pretty robust work from home culture, so Slack tends to be the best way to communicate with everyone all the time. And I have read a few different books and also use Gusto, which is the payroll tool, which has started at a Q&A on engagement. So they have a lot of like really good questions. So I will come up with a theme every month and just pull it from different sources and ask questions about that theme. And it's always super short, like no more than 4 questions, because I want to be respectful of people's time. And then they submit the surveys and the answers get published on Slack anonymously. And then and this is every month, and then every 3 months we'll have a forum to just discuss those themes and get feedback and think about like what would be helpful to improve or how to improve it.
Yeah, and at Galileo, we do a lot in Google. So we have a full goals and PD work plan in Google that everybody makes a copy of and plans their own engagement and work protocols throughout the year. And then quarterly, the evals set within that process are then bounced off of surveys we send each quarter. So we kind of flip back and forth. We do an engagement survey kind of in like a broad way, then a survey that is about your team and your manager, and we flip those back and forth each quarter, and the timing of those aligns with the same timing of your evals. So while you're giving your thoughts and opinions and surveys, you're also talking with your manager about your experience. And then at least twice a year, we all sit in like a big group and go through how the results are going, what the surveys look like, and then actively talk about how we're going to update as a group. So that's kind of also a cue at Galileo is everybody's always on the same page with information. We all come together, share things, understand the experience, and then kind of take it back into our own little functions to take action.
I love that. And then are you presenting the recommendations or kind of the how you're going to take action back to the employees afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Yeah,
like in a town hall setting or...
Exactly. That's in like a big way throughout the year. We've got like our kickoff that says like, here's our goals for the year. Here's where we want to work on. And there's always some sort of engagement listed there. And then we have like mini-year spots throughout the year to chat about what we're up to and which teams are working on which things.
Very cool. Yeah, and at Blueboard, we do a biannual engagement survey. We lean on a lot of the architecture from Culture Amp, actually. So that's been a brand that we've followed and have loved their methodology for quite a while now. So yeah, the ability to really twice a year get a nice reflection from the group, and again, make sure that we're digesting it and sharing at least 1 to 3 actions or initiatives or programs that are reflecting the feedback we received, and really spending a lot of time with the qualitative comments as well, making sure that we're understanding the real voice has been super helpful for us as an organization.
So Morgan, there are a lot of questions on this in the question and answer field.
Yeah.
And you know, it is absolutely crucial. I'm amazed at how many organizations do not conduct some type of an employee engagement survey? I think the number is around 25% that do conduct a survey. So it is really critical for you to gather that baseline data.
Yeah, so 75% are not measuring.
75% are not measuring, right? Even though 86% of companies say it's important. And so I think it's really critical that you gather that baseline data. And so you know what is our engagement starting point? Do we have 30% engagement, 50% engagement? Because that enables you to set goals year over year to increase your engagement score. But more importantly, it enables you to see from your voice of the employee the areas where they believe you need to most focus your efforts, right? And so what I always say to the organizations that I partner with is, you need to look at the 5 lowest scoring questions and really focus on those areas. And then with that, look at the 4 areas that we know are proven to drive trust in senior leadership and the emotional connection to the organization, right? So, and then when you look at all that, you develop action items that your managers are going to take in the trenches to start shifting some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And just really quickly, I know we're coming up on the hour. I'm going to flip over just to show the PDCC Credit. So for anyone who's tracking their SHRM certification, that is on screen for you. You're able to use that to monitor and add to your continuing education. But we'll take a few more questions. I did love the one that came through from Cecilia, and Jill, I'm sure you'll want to bite on this one specifically, but really thinking about dealing with a situation where maybe frontline leaders are more aggressively wanting engagement change, but the senior leadership isn't supporting it. And is there ever a strategy that has been successful from a bottoms-up approach of really encouraging engagement to happen?
In all honesty, I have never met a company that told me that they approached this as a grassroots effort and it worked. I meet companies all of the time that have culture committees, that have outsourced this to HR, where they're trying to execute this in one division, right? To try to show the rest of the company, you know, look what we did in our little in our line of business or our business unit. But the truth of the matter is, the definition of culture is how we do things here. Nobody sets the stage more for how we do things here than the senior leadership team. They set the stage. And so they have got to be involved in this initiative. Again, because, you know, when the CEO speaks, people listen. So if the CEO says, our culture is not where it needs to be, and we're going to fix that, and here's what I need you to do, managers in the trenches in these areas. Oh, and here's how we're going to measure our success. We're currently at 50% engagement. We have a goal a year from now to be at 55% engagement. And you all, managers, have a shared performance management objective to go from 50 to 55% in 1 year. It's a part of your one of your goals, right? So it comes full circle. The senior leader has to get it, and the easiest way for them to get it is the data, right? The data speaks volumes to senior leaders. Then they engage and inspire the managers. The managers act, and things improve. And I have not, being honest with you, I wish I could say that I've seen it work in an organization where the senior leadership team doesn't believe in it, doesn't buy into it. Maybe you can make some progress, but I don't think you'll ever see the type of progress that you, your employees, your customers, your shareholders, the street, your community, your vendors need.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just totally reinforces your strategy to make sure that leadership is bought in and that you have an executive champion who will also be the vocal point for any programs that you roll out. Someone who will stand on stage at those town hall meetings and really talk about progress, talk about winners, talk about people who have really lived that kind of engagement perspective and those engagement values. So that's really important too. It's not just to have leadership buy-in behind the scenes, but also for them to advocate publicly with the entire organization to know that we're making progress and that they are prioritizing it.
Absolutely. Guess what that does? Starts to re-engage your people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I wanted to kind of talk about some of your pillars. James asked, and Jill, maybe you can speak to this, how is the right person identified for the right seat? So kind of going into that specific bubble that you spoke to on the slide. Anything you want to elaborate on there when you're thinking about headcount placement?
Yeah, so I think in the hiring process, again, you need to hire 50% for a job skills match and 50% for a values fit. So you need to ensure that the person that you are hiring that their individual values align with your organization's values. Why? Because when a person's individual values align with the organization's values, the person immediately sees themselves in the organization and they develop a deep emotional bond to the organization. And so again, it's so critical for that to be there. And also, as you're building an amazing workplace culture or transforming your culture into a great place to work, you need people who walk the talk. You need people who role model the attributes that you are looking for in your values and in your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to cover just one or two more questions. Erica asked that, really inspiring leadership, a lot of times that requires data. And are there any data points that we can share with our leaders to really get them excited, to really get them motivated? I'll reiterate, and I'll paste this in the chat right now so everyone has it. The engagement guide that we talked about at the beginning actually has a ton of macro engagement stats in it that you can pull and use for your persuasive conversations with leadership. But from the panelists, has there ever been a stat that's really stood out to you that really helped get your leadership moving beyond like the 13% that Jill shared?
For us, it was a lot of like initial onboarding stats. We did start adding into surveys just to ask people, like, were you welcomed effectively? Do you understand the mission? Like, do you kind of know the fundamentals of what it is to work here? And our earlier responses to that were like high-ish, but definitely we were worried that like not everybody was on the same page with understanding like what the point of the company was. And so once we started to give that feedback, we said, we need to fill that gap. Here's what we want to do for it. So just trying to get data that shows like, are people on the same page? Or do we all believe the same things and have the same buy-in? So once you realize there is space to make up, that helps push the company forward.
Absolutely. Great. And before we jump off, someone had asked really about, what about those employees that don't want to change? They might be kind of considered a toxic employee. Have there been any best practices for helping their managers talk with them that you've seen really on the one-to-one level? Or is that more also a leadership strategy of getting people to kind of scaling the message of engagement and why it matters? Any stories or instances you guys want to speak to?
So this is Jill. I mean, when the CEO rolls out the employee engagement strategy to the managers, under the bucket called "Get the Right Person in Every Chair" will be something that looks like you need to identify, your weak links ASAP and work with them to develop, to grow, to improve, right? So it's every manager's responsibility in my mind to help motivate, inspire, and grow the people who report to you. However, we're all adults. Some people don't have the skills to be in the role they're in. Some people just have a really bad attitude and they're never going to change. Some people were placed into a leadership role and they're a really bad leader and they're never going to be a great leader, regardless of all the training you give them. And when you see that you have somebody in your organization that is not a good fit and there is not a place for them, in my opinion, they need to be removed from the organization. If you allow them to stay in your organization, you're simply moving around the deck chairs on the Titanic. And that is the truth, because that person isn't going to automatically lose their bad attitude, become a more responsible, accountable worker, or become a better leader just because you shifted them in the organization. Now, if they're completely mismatched and they're in the wrong job, that's a different story. But again, there are millions of people in this world who are in the wrong chair. And whenever I speak and I ask the live audience, how many of you know of somebody in your organization, in your company, who's in the wrong chair? 95% of the hands go up. And so again, people inherently do not like conflict. And so these poor performer issues many times are swept under the rug, and it is completely toxic in an environment where you are trying to create a great workplace.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jill. I want to be mindful of time. We had so many questions roll in, and people are also asking, how do I get my book? So I actually have everyone's emails as you ask questions in Q&A and chat. We have a record of that. So I'll be reaching out to you individually. We're going to probably do a drawing after all, because we had way more than 15 questions come through. So we will be notifying our winners in the next day or two, and I'll be collecting your address and mailing your book out. So just to close down, I wish we had more time. Jill, thank you. Josh, Amanda, huge clap. And thank you so much for like powering the ship as I had my little outage as well. But just for anyone who isn't seeing screen, the SHRM code is 19SFMU4. We'll have the recording and recap out to you in the next few days. And just a big thank you for everyone who participated. And we can't wait to see you on our next webinar in March. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.